Hi, and welcome to another installment of Connect with Carla V. Today I'm in a nice quiet room, so for some of you, I'm sure you appreciate not having the background sounds, and for others, you probably miss it. You probably like the mystery of where is Carla sitting and recording today. But I'm sitting with a guest who is mellow and balanced. And then, it's funny because I just remembered something about him. And then is that guest that may be throwing roses and stuff, that has a presence and stay as a stage performer that will get like everyone in the room feeling vibrations of music. But he's bigger than that, and more importantly, he's a part of this community that I get to be a part of. So, let's see. Alex Harris, sir. Would you introduce yourself the way my favorite singer when I was in my 20s and still today would introduce you, who happens to be the singer that sang so many songs that I grew up listening to, that my dad would play when he was sipping a drink and just mellowing and chilling, the way the Otis Redding would introduce you if Otis Redding was actually here. And for those of you who don't know who Otis Redding is, look it up.
How would Otis Redding introduce me? That's a good one. I didn't expect that for sure. I think Otis is from Georgia, so Macon, Georgia, about 2 hours from my little small hometown. So Manchester. I grew up in Manchester, Georgia.
I don't even know. I don't think I've ever heard of Manchester, Georgia.
No, you probably heard of Manchester, England, Manchester.
Yeah, a population of how many?
2,500 when I grew up.
Oh wow!
And then it grew a little bit to 4,500. So I think the introduction would be, from my home state, red clay hills of Georgia, musical family. And also someone that remains true to its southern roots, and also the family and music and faith, and someone that really loves people and is a passionate performer, writer, business. Otis Redding also was a great business person, and I share some of that. I just love it. So, and anyway, so I think that would be a brief intro.
What does it mean when you say? I think you said something like who embraces like being from the South, or what does that mean?
Yeah, that means my southern roots. I think,
roots. What does that mean?
I think there's something that is very rich about my southern upbringing that really has this kind of celebration of family, the culinary arts.
Oh wow!
Music.
Who in your family? Who in your family cooks that food? Like, what do they say that makes you want to hit your mama?
Yeah. My mother.
Oh.
And my grandmother, both of them were great cooks. And we would love in the summer times when my dad was now he's a retired school teacher.
Okay.
And so on the weekends, Sundays particularly morning, he would get up and he would sometimes make breakfast.
Which included what?
Oh, that will be the sausage, the eggs, grits, biscuits.
And if your mom was cooking the Sunday dinner, like what were some of the things?
Oh, we were just talking about yesterday, my sister and I, would be like collard greens or turnips. For people who don't know what turnips, they're a little bitter, but they're good. And she would often mix the turnips with the collard greens.
Yeah.
And they would use turkey neck.
Mm-hmm.
and
At that time,
yeah. And so, and then cornbread, sweet potato
cornbread
pie
with the kernels in it, like
yes.
cornbread. Ooh.
And then also one of the things that my mother would do, because for those of you that listening that don't know, just randomly you'll find blackberries in Georgia. And so where we lived in the country, a little town called Manchester, there will be blackberry vines around. We would go out and pick the blackberries and bring them to our mom, one of 8 children, and she would make blackberry pie.
I don't even think I've ever had blackberry pie.
It's amazing. It's almost like peach cobbler to the most part. It's a blackberry cobbler, really. So you have the crust, how you lay it, the crust on the bottom and top, and the blackberries and all the juices in there. And so they mix it. It's one of the best, and she still make it today.
Do you know I was 23 when I first had peach cobbler, and I was ready to fight why have I never had it? I was like, it was a thing that when I had it, I felt I had missed it my whole life. I was in New York. I was at a small restaurant off of Fulton Street in Brooklyn, and we went to a soul food restaurant. And as a Caribbean person, and that's when I realized I love all the sides of soul food. So I'm good if you give me a plate with collard greens, candied yam, or sweet potato souffle, spoon cornbread.
Right.
Like, I'll do it. The mac and cheese got to be right.
Yes.
Do not come to me with no
everybody
made in a pot mac and cheese. Stop. So, literally, even at the best barbecue restaurant, just give me the sides.
The sides are amazing, and it's all throughout the South. And our grandfather, my mother's father, he had a garden with collards and tomatoes
in agriculture
and all of it. I mean, he had a little farm on his land, and we had the hogs and the cows and the chicken cut and all that. And we'd go and get the fresh eggs and also the okra. And he fought in the war, and he became a chef in the when he got back at Warm Springs with FDR, the rehabilitation center there in Warm Springs. For those of you who are listening, there's a creek that runs through Warm Springs and it's a warm spring. The temperature never changes, remains 60 degrees.
I've heard of this, that people go there from all over.
Yeah, healing minerals in the spring. It was discovered by the Creek natives.
Oh, wow.
And they named the city, the little small city, literally you're in and out with one traffic light, but people come from all over the world.
I heard about that.
To this, and they built a rehabilitation center around it. It was actually FDR, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who built it, and he would get on the train that went 50 to 55 miles per hour from D.C. to Warm Springs.
Wow. And
people in all the little cities, when they knew that the president was coming, stand out and wave.
I tell you, when you talked about, you barreled over it a little bit, but you talked about the red clay.
Yeah.
And I went to a town called Cuthbert, Georgia. And, parts of it, I loved it. It was like back in time.
Yeah.
And I went to a church there, and it was like, yes, you had to go off the main road down.
It's a lot of churches like
and
that.
then it's back in the woods, and then next to the actual built church is the old church that was the church's schoolhouse, and the cemetery it's all like you could throw a stone here, throw a stone, and it's like, man.
Yeah, there are a lot of places throughout. And in fact, when you see a lot of the movies, when we were younger, we would go through these little towns, outside of ours, and you would see folks, dressed up for these kind of Southern type movies because they would come and do movies there.
Oh, wow.
And so it has been Georgia has a lot in the big oak trees and with the swings in them. Everything that you would see, for those of you who never had a chance to really go outside of Atlanta.
Right.
Because Atlanta didn't change until the Olympics came, really.
Okay.
Yeah. And 96, I think it was. So we were really young kids. they that's when the city became more of what we know today.
Wow.
But before then, it wasn't necessarily very. Many of the areas were very unsafe. It had grown to become that. Back in the day when Dr. Martin Luther King was there, it wasn't quite like that.
No.
By far. And so it had really become this very interesting. But you had a lot of folks who really worked to get the Olympics, and you got cleaned up, and a lot of people had jobs. Andrew Young, Congressman Andrew Young, had a lot to do with that. And he had a conversation with us about that when we were at Chautauqua a couple of years ago. But but the South is very, very, the roses that in the springtime, when you ride down there, we call them the honeysuckles. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Honeysuckles?
I don't think they grow anywhere else but in Georgia.
Is it this thing where the middle part of it you suck
and
it?
You suck it, yeah.
That was in Guyana.
Okay.
And,
so we have it in Georgia.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that's and you just smell the aroma when you roll down your windows. And when I moved to Boston and I would come back to Georgia, especially in the springtime, it was always amazing just to roll down. It was kind of this refreshing because there are a lot of roads that are just 2-lane roads, and you're just riding and it's all the woody areas. And then in the wintertime when you go home, you smell the wood, the fireplaces, the chimney, and
there
the
is
smoke.
Something
it smells like Christmas time.
Because and it's weird because I don't think we have that here. Meaning
we
in
don't
the South,
no.
What we have
maybe
here
like
is what we have here is. Let me be frank. When I moved here to St. Petersburg, one of the first memories was, let's say, having Thanksgiving here and being able to go sit on the water and eat a light meal. And I'm like, this is living. Everything else is existing. This is. Wait a minute. It is November. I'm outside.
Yeah.
I don't have on a coat. I don't need a sweater. So there is value in that.
A lot of value in that.
You talked about being from a musical family.
Yes.
So almost like it's in your DNA.
Right.
Who in your family?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting. So neither parent is musically inclined as it relates to playing an instrument. My dad sings a little bit. My mother doesn't sing at all as far as singing in tune.
that would be me. That would be me. I could sing at the top of my lungs, but even my little nieces and nephews are like, Auntie Carla, God didn't give you that gift.
I would frame it as a miracle story, but before I share that, we grew up, and I tell people that not only did we find music, but music found us and my siblings and me. I started playing the drums with my neighbor's buckets in their backyard.
Okay.
And I took the pine tree branches, made my drumsticks, and I took the pie crust pans, the tin pans that my mother, they often would save I don't know if it was just a Southern thing, but I know it was quite the culture where they would save the pan and make, new pies. So, and when they would make the crust from scratch, particularly, and I would take them and make it my symbol. So, and my brother, who's now an attorney, you may know Norman, I'm not sure, Norman Harris. Anyway, he's in Tampa, and he's an attorney now, but he also plays guitar. His first guitar were the rubber bands from the collard greens from the market. They take the big orange or red rubber bands around the collards. I think mostly collard greens, and then he strung them to make his first guitar.
Oh wow, with nails on something.
Yeah, the nails on the side, just like you see on TV. But we didn't even see it. That's the thing. So we didn't have any reference.
Right.
We were our parents were very strict around television and stuff at that time, so we didn't grow up watching TV. We read books and made music and created stuff.
Right.
That was it.
Because you had that's what you did with your free time.
Right.
Is going
creative. Yeah, building stuff out in the backyard and in the woods, and just very creative. And people ask us, what do your parents do? I said the one thing that I think they did. That sometimes in my engagement with parents and what I do here and work with different parents over the years is that they allow creative freedom. And I'm not sure if they even knew it.
Right. Yeah, we didn't have a name for it.
Right, but my dad believed and once because he was more the disciplinarian. So he was very meticulous about certain things. But the one thing he did allow us to do is be as creative as we wanted, and he was kind of because of his own childhood, he would say. So he allowed us that creative freedom. And he felt that if he's going to be strict on this one hand, he's going to allow us to do some positive stuff and freedom. And
how many siblings? I know you talked about a sister, a brother. But
so I have 3 sisters and I have 4 brothers, so it's 8 of us. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And so this oldest is a girl.
And what size house? When you were growing up, how
we only have. Well, there are 2 stories. I mean, it's 2 parts of the story. So down to me, I'm in the middle.
I'm a middle child.
Oh, okay.
So yes. I'm the left-handed middle child.
Yeah. So we I have to remind me to say something about left-handed. So I from Naomi, the oldest, to me, we were born in a 2-bedroom trailer that my dad bought. It was his first house, and he's the first to graduate from his among his siblings. There's 5 of them. And so he got a job and, teacher. And then he tells the story when he got his first paycheck, he just almost cried. He's like, wow, I went to school and that's what I'm saying.
Oh, wow.
But he was able to do it. But anyway, when my brother that's younger than me was born, we moved in a 4-bedroom house. And the 2 younger ones after him, they were born later. They're like, there's a little bit of an age gap between us. So we all 8 of us didn't grow up in a 4-bedroom.
Right.
So I think it was basically 6 of us at once that grew up together. And because when the 7th and the 8th child were born, my oldest siblings were going to college.
Okay.
So, but it still was a crowded house.
Right. But my point is that, and probably 1 bathroom. And
pretty much.
And people learn how to. It's like now you tell a young person about 1 bathroom. I didn't know that you could have anything.
Everybody has their own
bathroom.
Because my parents had their bathroom. We basically had to share. They went and had to wait, and there was time. But my mother was very great at creating a schedule, and we had a day where we watched it. We had our chores where we washed dishes and we did the yard. But I enjoyed doing the yard more than washing dishes. I was very creative because I can go out and get rocks and create, and plants and do all that stuff. So that was the other creative part of me. I love the landscaping and stuff like that.
So when did you realize that you had the gift of? So for there are good singers, right? But you're a performer,
right?
And I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard somebody define you as a performer,
right?
Because when you get up there, like the mellow guy sitting talking to me, and the persona that comes out, what are you channeling, and when did you realize that's what you were supposed to be doing?
As far as I can remember, and I know it had to be either when I started kindergarten, or at least maybe around 1st grade, somewhere along in there. I was singing this song because I come from the Pentecostal church. Okay. Or some people reference it as the gospel church for folks who know. Because when you say Pentecostal, that people think, wow, that's different things. But it was all good. But we, they hand clapping, foot stomping, piano, drums, all that kind of good stuff that everyone does these days. It wasn't then when we were younger, this is just recently just came on scene, was very acceptable across religious organizations. But I remember singing a song that was call and response, was I get joy when I think about, and then the response would be, what have you done for me? And so, and that was such a simple song, but that's the one, and everybody was like, whoa. And the second time I was playing the buckets, and then I told my dad that if he got me a drum set, I would play for his revival. I'd never had a drum set.
He was a pastor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He still is. A small congregation. But there was a drum set, so we didn't have a drum set. So I told him if he gets me one, then I will play.
Right.
I never played a drum set before, never seen one up close in person. Besides in the magazine,
How old were you
I had to be
around?
like 6, 7 years
Oh,
old.
wow.
Because because I remember we started the group, we were 7, so I had to be 6 or 7. So it was in that between time around that same year. So he said, okay, so 2 doors up, our neighbor, she knew the musical director that she went to our church. Her name is Tamara Buchanan, and she knew the music director or the band teacher at the high school, and they had a drum set. So when they were good friends and so on and so forth, so they called him Mr. Man. And so Mr. Man, he let us borrow the drum set through Tamara Buchanan, and we played it in the church, and they put it there, and I played it for the first time, and everybody was like, at all. So that's when I talk about music found me, and I found it. And I would sing and play, and then my brother, who I talked about earlier, Alonzo, he wanted to play drums, and so then I would teach him how to play drums, and then I would be out singing.
So you just had an ear for it.
Just had an ear. I mean, all of us, we didn't take music lessons until we got to college.
Wow.
That's when I learned how to play piano and read music and play acoustic guitar later. Enough for writing. I'm not like a concert pianist or guitarist, but there are some of us, some of the brothers particularly, are when it comes to instruments, and the sisters who sing it. So, I don't know. I mean, that as far as I can remember, and everything that I do, it's done in a way that I try and bring all of my experience to it, and I want people to feel, good about it. And I remember watching this movie when I was really young. Not too young, because we started watching a little bit. The younger ones watched television all day, but the older ones did. And so
they got laxes.
They got lax. And we were limited to PBS and what you call the educational channel, our parents would call it. But at some point when I was probably like early teens, in this movie, and I heard this was one statement that said that in a line in a movie, it said, "I want you to sing." I can't remember what movie it was. And they said, as if this kid across the world, that really needs you. And I never forgot that. And every time I sang that, they just really just need to hear you sing. And they just, in a very depressed state or whatever the actual line was, it was saying that the coach was telling the singer, the student, the younger person, that to really allow their gift of music to lift up the spirit of this person that really needed to hear that. And I said, I want you to sing it loud and project it as if this person way across the world. And I never forgot that coaching that student got in the movie. And I started to apply that to my own experience and realize that there is something very unique that I can bring in people. Before we even watched James Brown or Michael Jackson, any of those, people would compare me that when I was younger, and I never had seen any of those people. It was like there was something innate about the experience. I know James Brown from Georgia, Michael Jackson from a big family. I think there was just something that is a connectivity. Some people, Lawrence Watson at Berkeley talks about the connectedness from the continent of Africa and all that kind of stuff.
You don't even want to get me started. I keep talking about this. Have you done your ancestry DNA or your any of the above?
I have not. I have to.
I have not either, and I keep having this calling to do it. My daughter has been asking, and she keeps wanting me to do it, and I keep saying but now. And so in a couple of interviews recently, I talk about that a lot, and I talk about this vision of having a room of 300 to 500 people, and it's fully funded, and we all get to get our ancestry done, right? And then they give us all the envelopes with our results, and then they make a call and they say, well, if you have more than 60% from Ghana, if you would go to the left side of the room. And you have more from Nigeria, go here. And then it's like you're finding your new tribe, and you're realizing just what you're talking about. That a lot of, even though we've been separated throughout the diaspora, now we're finding that there's commonalities in whether I like potatoes. You're like, oh, I like potatoes. like everybody over here, they love the arts.
Yeah.
Everybody over here, they are more inclined for numbers and math and whatever. And you start seeing these commonalities come
Right.
out. So even though we're one,
Yeah.
like we have this, and so it's funny because I keep talking about it, and then some people are like, that's a great idea, and other people who are more local to this area is like, nah, we're gonna find out that Daddy had all these kids. My innocent mind hadn't even like thought about that. I more thought about just the commonality.
Yeah, there's
of
some
interest.
connectivity, I think, in whether it's environmental and or from a DNA. I think I think people think about how when you look at people like Little Richard, which I just saw the documentary on him.
They just did a new documentary.
Yeah, they did a new documentary. Just came out like a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Good God, they missed no.
Yeah, so they come from Macon, Georgia, big family. Dad's a preacher. Same thing with James Brown. Otis Redding.
Religion.
Yeah.
And singing in the church.
Yes.
Raise half of the music that we value and appreciate. What I will say is, I'm going to call it uniquely different in a sense, is you still embrace. So a lot of people like grow up and reject, and you still have, I hear it, a strong appreciation for how that formed you.
Yeah, and I do, and I always tell people that faith, family, faith, music, and education, in pretty much that order. Really, I recognize or acknowledge as the pillars of my existence, and it's nothing that I have experienced I reject, because if I reject that, then I am not fully embracing who I am. Every part of everything that has happened, both internally, externally, shapes and makes me who I am. So people say, "Oh, I like Alex." Well, you like all of that too.
Yeah.
All right. Or if you don't like Alex, you don't like all of that.
Right.
So I think that what I've learned, so my educational background also is in sociology and psychology.
Okay.
So
I love all human behavior. I love human behavior all day.
Yeah. So I started to see, and I think that, everything, even as an artist who started only singing gospel music, and we were not, the forbidden fruit was to listen or to do any other genre.
Yeah.
But when we went to college, and that was quite typical for religious families, especially in the Bible Belt, right? But as we went to college, we learned other genres. I learned to sing classical music, which I toured for doing well for 2 years, and learned professionally how to do that, and singing in other languages. And and some of my other siblings, they learned other genres. We started doing it, and then we did this whole thing we called the spiritual experience, which were from field holla to the spirituals to we have ragtime, we have blues before that, and jazz and ragtime. And then the big band, and then we had rhythm and blues, when we had soul music. Of course, gospel started in the early 30s. And so what we started to realize that this thing that we celebrated as the gospel music didn't start until the 30s, because they weren't singing, like, even in what we, in the biblical text, that's not gospel music. That was very specific to the culture,
right?
So what we know as a genre didn't start until the 1930s by Thomas A. Dorsey, who was a jazz singer who people rejected and didn't want him playing in the church. Even the gospel songs like what was it, Lord Will Make a Way somehow, and all those kind of songs that he was playing in late 20s and early 30s. So there was a lot of knowledge that we started to obtain, and then was able to apply to our personal experience. But the spirit of what we do, and what we bring to the stage, whether we're singing a love song or R&B, soul, or jazz song, or whatever the genre is, I think that I bring all of that experience from my gospel roots. Because to reject that and say, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that, that's too gospel," is like, then I'm like dismissing part of who I am. And I think that's where the internal conflict comes with a lot of people, and they break, they have these mental breakdown,
because they feel like
they're rejecting a part of the album.
Mm-hmm.
Even if a person has an extremely ugly history or foundation, I think it's important to embrace it, because embrace it not as a endorsement. Right. Embracing it as that's my journey, that's my story, that's an acknowledgement of who I am, and that's my story.
That's part of the quilt and the fabric that you get to experience.
Some thread won't be straight, and some is going to be really broken and torn, but it's still part of it, and you don't just want to take it out and throw it away.
And we struggle as a society to some call it to accept the whole person. Right. And it's like for sure, my parents weren't happy when I decided that leaving a successful corporate career and deciding to be more connected in my community. I mean, they tried to impose their fears on me as a grown adult person that said, no, my values align more with living life to be kind of the things that I benefited from, like how you talk about benefiting from how you grew up and everything, like wanting my children to at least get to have access to see that, because modeling and them being, if not, my daughter, she was the younger of the two, she more loved the expensive vacations and the trips and the big house, and me wanting to show that it doesn't matter what car you drive, it doesn't matter what kind of house you live in, like, who are you? And if you don't know who you are, then you need those things to validate you. So I'm glad you gave us the background that you have this, that you studied psychology.
Sociology and psychology.
And that totally helps me, informs me about a little bit more about, because I'm like, how does he get to be so rounded, so I call it your pie. So we know, so music has this role in your life. Was there a time where your father, when you started doing quote unquote secular music, where your dad was like, hey, or what happened?
Yeah, I think both parents. I think when we did, I always tell people very unique with my parents, because if we're doing it in an academic setting, it's different. If we're doing it outside of the academic setting, so I think it's a struggle, because both are educators. I would look at it as a struggle to reconcile, how do you can perform this outside of an academic setting into any hall, whether it's a ballroom, nightclub, wherever. So I think now, of course, they do know we do more than, like, one brother. He just was on a world tour with Coldplay, MD for her. The other's her EP, our exec producer for her first big record that she did, and then the current one that they're working on now. So there has been, and I think it was a little bit more embracing, because we started doing classical music. There's this kind of Southern thing that if it's, saying like, oh, and all that, classically. Of course, that's not my classical voice for those who are listening, but that was just an idea. That is okay, regardless if you're singing a love song like Just Sole de Ganji or something of those, De Lotus Bluma. So but when you're singing Let's Stay Together, it may not be totally accepted, but they have slowly started to embrace, and I'd say, there's no one particular genre, from a religious person perspective, that God, or the source that we identify or label as God, created. Didn't create the genre. The genres didn't come on the scene until the late 20s. Some of them, and even when they were doing the blues, it wasn't called the blues. And so it was later these labels and titles came to identify certain expressions or chord progressions, etc. But I think it comes from a place. I mean, like I said, you can sing gospel in you're not gospel.
Right, facts. Right, and right, right. Look, you can preach and not be saying.
Exactly, exactly. So we've seen a lot. I won't say I've seen it all, but I've seen a lot and I've heard a lot. But the reality is, I think that music overall is an expression of one's experience, and it's a gift that we've been given, and that I feel fully responsible how I utilize the gift in a very authentic way and tell stories that are very me. So I wouldn't go out and try and write something, a rap. I haven't experienced some of the rap,
I try to talk to, I probably should connect you to one of the young people that I work with.
Right.
And Miss Carla, wants me to see his performance. And I'm like, this is not even you. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Like, be you. You are here. Your experience has value.
Exactly.
Trust me, it'll shift everything about what. But I think people feel like to be popular
or to be accepted.
Right. I have to do this. Right. So I will definitely make that connection because I think
please do.
It coming from me, it's like, oh, it's Miss Carla. It coming from you, it may have, and then actually what I did was, so I said, bring me these people who are helping to coach you. Have them come to me, and they did. And I said, look, help me out. First of all, why is he able to curse and you be okay with it? I'm not okay with it because that's not what he should be doing at his age. So they're like, we've told him. I said, okay, thank you. I'm just saying I need to know that he is being guided properly because I want you to be able to perform at the farm, and I'm not going to let you do it if this is how you showing up. Yeah,
and we tell our students at our conservatory, arts conservatory for teens, that when they are doing production, that of course certain language they can't use, but we say there are many ways you can express your story and share your story without using offensive language that to some and that specifically in swearing it. And so but for me, that's who I am. I'm from the South. I'm from the church. I came up a specific way, as all people have, and I think that we all should remain true to who we are and allow
people stray away from that. If the foundation isn't solid, I think it's easier. Like I tell people, if my family, my aunts, my uncles, and everybody tell me how amazing I am, who in the world could look at me and tell me that I'm not and me believe it? So I'm like, I was validated at birth.
Right. And that's what we see ourselves as an organization. When I started to be that other arm is what I would say, or that system outside of a system that create that environment of a hope conscious. And because if you show me someone, and John Bryant Hope talks about this, I think I said his name correct. He talks about John Hope Bryant. I said this Miller. I'm sorry. He talks about the hope, about having hope, and then I started talking about hope conscious. Because if you show, he said the most dangerous person is the person that doesn't have hope. And I won't say it exactly how he said it because I can't remember verbatim, but the essence was that, I think if you can create the environment where that hope can live, I think then we can find resilience. We will be able to identify and then learn how to use it for ourselves in whatever situation we're in, even if our foundation isn't as solid as some, right? And I think as an organization and as an artist, because this is what I was doing as a music entertainer before I started ACT, and my brothers and I would travel across the country, specifically during the summers. We would go to different places where young people have us come and speak, and sometimes even during school time we would go to schools on West Coast, Northeast, all over. I think the last time I counted, I've been in about 35 different states throughout the United States. And so we've spoken to various audiences, and we wanted to inspire the students, one, to develop a sense of hope, right? And in doing so, resilience. And I think when you do that, you discover this identity that you have, and it's the discovery of your value, of yourself, your skills, your talents. and realize how that really is special, being who you are, not trying to be someone else. And success isn't measured by what someone else's success is or what someone else thinks. It's one's commitment and dedication to your identity and your identifying your calling, right? And so that's kind of how we have, as an organization, personally and
How
as an
old
organization.
is
11 years old, but we started 3 years prior to here. And then before that, I was in Boston doing some work. And then I was speaking in South Florida.
Why was it important for you? Normally, artists that's busy developing their careers are more focused internally. And even if you're doing volunteer work out there, why was it important for you to start an organization? What was it in you that saw that whether it's Boston or St. Pete or Tampa, wherever, this is needed?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting story, and I'll give a short version, but I started developing this curriculum. I had the idea, and when we were in North Carolina, my brothers and I performing at the convention center, and we were sitting out waiting on get the sound check. And I said, we should have every summer we can have like a camp, and we can have folks come from all over the world. And I had these big ideas, ambitious ideas. And then when I went back to Boston, I met randomly in the George Sherman Union, which was where the students, and they would have the Erie and all that cool stuff. A lady by the name of Dr. Linda Crane, who's from the West Coast, who's a psychologist, but who's into the art. She took kids off the street and taught them how to paint, spray, and how to sit down and have dinner. And she would bring them home. And anyway, she did it for 26 years. And so she was older at this time, but she felt called to go back to school and get her doctoral degree in ministry. And so we literally randomly met. We were in a class our first year together, but we just kind of bumped into each other in Georgia, and we started talking. And she said, "Well, when you get ready to do it, let me know. I want to help you." And so I took up on her word. I never forgot. 3 years later, I would say, "Hey, I'm ready." And she sat down and she helped me structure the basic structure of what I took on paper. At that time, I call it this 360 Creative Arts National Alliance. And it was a curriculum that was about a theological term, a personal formation course, and then I added the part from my sociology background, for social transformation. And this was in graduate school. My graduate work is I have a master's in theology and a master's in social work. So that was on bringing these together. And so when I started to write this all up, and in fact, more so talking, she said, "I'll take all the notes and be your scribe." And she sat down and she wrote all this, and she said, here's how you package this. And then I spoke at Yale. I spoke in South Florida for Florida Memorial, Nova Southeastern University, and all these different colleges in the school district in the South. And they wanted this now, but St. Pete grabbed it first. And so then I met Carl Lavender, and I had one conversation with him at the Historic Royal Theater. And he said, "We want you here. What do we call you?" I said, "Artist in Residence." And he said, "You'll be the first artist in residence in Midtown." And so he had the Tampa Bay Times to write an article on me about being the first artist in residence in Midtown.
How'd you end up here in St. Pete anyway?
Yeah, so that's another part of the story. My brother, one of my brothers who I talked about, who's the attorney, he had a friend that he met in law school that lived in Tampa, and his buddy's wife. When his friend got ready to launch his law firm, his wife said, "You should call Norman." And so, and convinced Norman to move to Florida. At the time, I had already been traveling back and forth from Massachusetts, Boston, and New York, between these three cities, Fort Lauderdale, New York, and so when I was in Fort Lauderdale for a music retreat, I met Lamont Rucker from Greenlee, who had a friend who lived in St. Pete, and said, "You should meet Alex." And then she said, "Oh, wow, you're in St. Pete. Do you know Carl Lavender?" I said, "No." He said, "He just raised like the $2 million or whatever it was for the Royal." I said, "Oh, wow, you should meet him." And then, so we just all connected. And then I cold called Carl. I was in New York in the studio, and I left a message, and he called me back. And I said, "Well, I'm in New York right now. When I get back, we can meet." He said, "Sure." And we met at the Royal. And he talked about Herbert Murphy, who was the director there at the time. And they had vision to work with teens.
Yes.
And no one had done it. So I said, well, here's what I've written, and here's my resume. And they had an opportunity with a foundation. At that time, there was like $250,000 that they were trying to implement this for a 3-year period. And I said, well, we call it artists in residence. And then that's how that started.
Wow. And yeah, because I know people in our city like the Ashley Briscoes of the world that talks about like her whole DNA, she felt was shaped by having access to the Royal Theater and being able to be part of
all those students came through my program. And that's when I was teaching, and I was doing all the artists in residence, developing Shut Down the Streets. We did our first music video on that. I don't know if you remember that, but we did Come Together, and that's when I met Bill Leverts. I just talked to him about this the other day, and so you remember we did it. We shut down the streets, and we had these cameras on 22nd Street. And I talked about doing a huge block party, and we ended up doing Motown and Midtown. In fact, to this day, my story, and I'm going to keep it this way. I don't know how true it is, but I cold call, because I would do that a lot. Barry Gordy's office in California, spoke to his assistant. To this day, I don't know how in the world I got his assistant.
You're right.
And so I was trying to, and I gave them the idea of what we were doing. At this time, there was nothing about they're going to do a Motown musical or anything, right? It was years later, and so I ended up randomly meeting Kevin McCullum in Sarasota over dinner, and he said, we're doing the Motown music. And I said, oh my God. I said, I talked to Barry Gordy's assistant, and I can't remember her name at the time I did. And he said, so he went to Europe, and he mentioned my name. She said, yes, I remember Alan.
Oh, wow.
And I said, I believe they got my idea. Of course, it was his story, but still. But anyway, that's really a little fun fact that I like to claim as an inspiration. How true it is, I don't know. But it's really cool, because later I did meet him in person. And Kevin blew me out to meet him, because he's one of 8 children, and he was an amazing person. And just to meet a guy who changed the world in music. And when I went to the museum, it was magical. And it was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. So anyway.
So I see your pie. There's the music. There is this, let's call it your love for community.
Right.
And specifically for youth and teens in our community.
Right.
We share that. And a more private side of your life. Tell me about meeting your wife, and how did you know that this woman was the woman that could handle everything that is Alex Harris?
Everything that is that's funny. So I met my wife, Emily Ghosh, when I first got here. I got to Florida to live. I was kind of living part-time. And so a mutual friend was having a fashion show and learned that I sing. And so I went to that fashion show. And Emily was working with her a little bit. She was working at a television station at the time. But and I saw her, and I introduced myself. And Alex, of course, I didn't know she was dating somebody at the time, but she didn't have on a wedding band and nothing, and an engagement ring, so I thought I would introduce myself. So anyway, I like to tell the story this way, because it sounds like there's a different way to tell the story, but go ahead. I like to say that I chased
here,
her.
You can give the last.
I think she likes to hear this one. That I said 10 years before we got engaged, that I chased her, and I was in the friend zone, basically. But I had a crush on her for 10 years. But then I thought, okay, well, we just can be friends, because maybe we're not interested, because it was almost like you never could find the right timing. She was dating this, and then then she got a relationship. Next thing I know, she in another relationship. I was like, oh man, I missed my chance.
Right.
And so anyway, then we genuinely became really great friends. She was very much into community and helping. I call her Mother Teresa.
Yes.
And so she was very fascinated, and she was developing this kind of spirituality and giving back like Mother Teresa. She loved people like Mother Teresa and all these, spiritual leaders and giving back. And she was in corporate America and just had this kind of epiphany. And she tells the story, that was a thing. Her dad's from Calcutta, and so they learned to just work. And then she had this epiphany where she wanted to do something different, and she went to Omega Institute and had this kind of a coming to Jesus moment, we were saying in the South. And I think that then she launched her business, Soul Media Global, because one of the inspirations is that because of how media, and she had been in media, was so influential but wasn't so positive, and how can she transform and use the media platform to be positively impactful.
Right.
And so there was a lot of connectedness that started to happen just organically. And then I was like, oh my God. So I just wrote a song about this called We Turn to Us. Actually, it's going to be on my new record. So we were like, how do I get out the friend zone now?
Right. Oh, yeah. So this is the guy that doesn't have any problems meeting women,
exactly.
and that every woman wants to meet, is literally having to strategize
exactly how to get out the friend zone.
This particular woman.
Exactly. I think it more so in my head, and then I finally said, okay, well, just take the chance. So I knew it would be taking a chance because we had developed a really great friendship, and but I was willing to, and then it just happened to be perfect timing. I was talking to someone for a short period of time before that, but it wasn't, it served its time and purpose, and it organically, disseminated, but it didn't get at the level of seriousness that I thought. So the timing was great.
Okay.
And it was in 2017, and then the first date, even though she probably didn't know it was a date, was
you pulled out the stops.
Exactly. It was at the Mojave Theater for the orchestra, last concert of the season. And at that time I had just joined the board of the orchestra at that time. And then we went to Ceviche. They had this Latin dance. So it was a full night of different genres. Yeah. We did the classical, then we did the Latin dance, and then later we ended at this club that did hip hop. And so it was a very fun night. Right. So the thing was, like, the lady who's managed me at that time just said, just have fun, Alex, And so we had fun, and then it evolved until later that year. It turned into our serious relationship, and then we got engaged early February at a concert of our favorite artist.
You were okay.
No, but I ended up singing though. So this reggae artist that she liked, and it was actually part of a Christmas gift because she had introduced me to, and I ended up liking the artist's music as well.
Who?
It was. Oh man, don't make me.
Older reggae artist?
No. Oh man, not Barris, but he came here.
Yeah, that's who came to my mind was Barris.
But no, he's
it wasn't
not
Barris. It wasn't Buju. It wasn't trying to see who all came to Janice.
Beautiful. He sang the song.
Then move from.
Okay, we're moving from it because I'm drawing a blank here. But anyway, so we went to the concert in Orlando, and he was coming to the States. He doesn't tour the States that often, but the lady who was managing me at the time, she said, if it's the artist is well known, there's one person who knows like all the artists, and then she called her in Jamaica, and true enough, she knew it. So she put us together on the phone, and I said,
"Is your wife Jamaican?" No. She just likes the genre of music.
Yeah. And so we got on the phone. So and we had everything. We were going to go to the show, just go to the show. And so I said, okay, great, we'll set it up. Because I was like, okay, how do I, this time we were serious, and we had already talked about getting married and stuff like that. Potential. And I was like testing the waters, like, if I propose to you, would you say yes?
Right.
And so anyway, so I was like, this is the perfect time. I felt, you just know that the timing. And so fast forward, we went out to Orlando, and we were not going to go because she had to fly out that morning with our new client to Tallahassee. And so she had to get some things together, but she said, you can use a ticket, maybe your brother or somebody else go. And I said, oh no. I said, if you can't go, then we just have to wait. So this time I'm like, oh my God, now my plans are being shattered.
Right.
I said, well, if it's to happen, it will, and if it's not. And that's the way I kind of just exhale. And true enough, she was going to get her nails done. I said, well, after you get your nails done, then just give me a call, let me know. And so she called and said, you want to go? I said, sure. And I was headed to get something to eat. And then I did like a donut, went back home and said, meet me at my house because we're going to Orlando.
Yeah.
And then when she got there, I had left the door open, but I was on the phone with the guy and I didn't want her to hear me. So I went to the bathroom.
Right.
And she didn't know what I was talking about.
Right.
And so I was setting up everything. But then on my way, I said, oh my God, how is he going to know who I am?
Right.
And so we made our way down to the front, and we, at the end of the concert, so he said, is Alex here? And she was confused. She was like, why is he calling Alex on stage? Like, and so I come up there and he starts singing one of John Legend's songs, I Will Stay With You. And then he gave the mic to me. I sang and did my thing, and then I broke it down. He said, wait. Isn't that something you're supposed to be doing? And so that's when she was ecstatic. Like I was singing on stage. It was like 3,000 people.
Wow.
And people just was like going crazy. It was a really good.
It was a moment.
It was a moment that you couldn't plan for. Wow. It was one of, I wanted it to happen. And later she told me that she had never shared with me before that she had always wanted to be proposed to at a concert.
What? So it was divine.
Yeah, it was divine.
And then what's the left hand connection?
I play left hand guitar, but I'm right handed.
Yeah, see, and I am left handed, and there's certain things that I do right handed. And so, but all my upbringing, it was, being popped on the hand to try to be right handed, which is funny because my dad is a southpaw, but he writes and everything else with his right hand. But I always, growing up, thought that I was left-handed because everybody in my dad's family is left-handed.
I started playing the drums as a left-hand drummer, and then I ended up doing it the right way because it's the opposite side of the snare and the hi-hat, right? But when I play piano, I can form chords with my left hand as easy as I can with my right hand. Before
we even wrap, do you even remember, Alex, how we first connected? Is this something?
I usually do, but I can't. Where
I don't know. But like one of the things I thought about is I think the first time I saw you perform was at the Woodson for a Romantic Expression. Did you ever perform?
Yes.
And I remember I was there with my friend Keisha, and you're performing.
And you said the roses, I was like, yeah, because I haven't done that since COVID, but I'm going to start.
So that's, for some reason, I remember that being the first time.
That's probably right, because Cranston would do all the Romantic Expressions. I think he started at the Royal, and then he went to the Woodson maybe like 2 years later, because I think I did like 3 of them.
Yeah, I just know we saw you there, and my friend Keisha was like beside herself. She's like, oh my God, because you would just get down on the knees and do the roll. I said,
that's probably right for sure.
That's when I think, and so and we're doing this parallel journey as we're both caring for teens in our community.
For sure.
And I could sit here all day and chat with you because I've learned so. Sometimes you know a person, but you don't know a person.
Right.
And so just this casual sit down allowed me, and I'm sure others that are listening, a deeper window into who is, or a aspect of who is Alex Harris.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I want to say something I referenced just in case someone remembered. I said about the miracle part about the birth. So, the siblings in the music. Is that my mother actually prayed for musicians. And because they wanted music in my dad's church, and they couldn't keep musicians. They were just come and go.
Wow.
So little did she know she was carrying the musicians, and the music found us, we found it, and it just all happened. And
she birthed musicians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.